Yeah, I'd like to echo a lot of what's been said there. I remember back in the divorce campaign being very active as a socialist in it, and we brought out a poster which carried the face of the late Bishop Eamon Casey and basically said, let the bishops look after their own families. And it was very popular indeed in that campaign for those of us who were advocating that there should be divorce. I was just looking at the figures in that referendum. It was narrowly passed in November 1995 by a margin of 50.28% to 49.72%. And thinking back on it, the interesting comparison with that and the recent same-sex marriage referendum is that when you looked, and I remember sitting in a hotel in town watching the results coming in, when you looked at where the areas that actually brought in the radical progressive change for people to be able to control their own lives were not the leafy suburbs of Foxrock or what do you call that place out near where you live, Ruth? Castleknock, thank you. It was rather the working class areas of Ballymun, Ballyfermot and the South Inner City, where when the votes were coming in you could see the tipping of the results in a positive direction in both referendum on these. So I do welcome the bill, Deputy, and I would agree with Deputy Coppinger that we should probably amend it. I make a small point about 1917. There was a revolution in Russia. Prior to that revolution it was legal for men to beat up their wives. As soon as that revolution took place, one of the first acts of the revolutionary workers' government was to legalise divorce and to legalise abortion. So when we're told, and have been told in the past by people like pro-life movement and the Catholic Church and the same bishop I mentioned earlier on, that the sky will fall in if you bring these changes, that if you allowed in divorce, the whole sort of fabric of Irish society would crumble because it's all about holding it together with the mammy, the daddy and the 2.5 kids. In actual fact, Irish society and the notion of how a family is run has utterly changed from that idea. The anti-divorce poster indeed said, hello divorce, bye-bye daddy. And yet the sky has not fallen in. What's making the sky fall in for families is in fact what was referenced earlier on, the crisis in housing. I have a very good friend who just retired and retired purposely early from working full-time for Women's Aid. She retired because she couldn't stand another day of going to court with women who were being forced back into abusive relationships because there was nowhere to house them. And that's happening every day we speak in this country in the courts. People are not only going back into relationships where there's no love, but where they're being violently abused on a daily basis and their children are being abused. So I know somebody who, as I say, retired early just to get away from the depression of having to do that to families. Divorce, absolutely, and divorce when you want it, not after 2 years. So I think we do need to put an amendment, or probably will put an amendment, although at the same time I do welcome the move to progress this issue. Because issues to do with personal morality, control over your relationships, control over your lives are fundamentally important that we all have a grip at that we're not forced to live in unhappy or oppressive situations. And this is why we are very determined that the question of a referendum on the 8th Amendment should be put to the people. This is the 21st century with generations of new men and women who've never had a say on these issues, never in their lives had a vote on these issues. And it just really gives you a taste of, I think, what really needs to be done is, and if we were to have a revolution in Ireland, God willing, we do, is to absolutely deliver the separation of the powers of church and state and deliver an education service and a health service and a society that is not allowed to be dictated by one set of values, religious or spiritual values or power of any one set of society. Having a truly secular society that's literally divorced from the church is a very important ambition of future generations. The last thing I'd say is that we do have quite a low rate of divorce in this country, and I think one of the reasons is the economic crisis-ridden society that we have. I think the other reason is that people do still avail of the legal separation method, because a divorce is expensive, it's cumbersome, and it can be very difficult for people. So we need to have a much more liberal regime, and I welcome your attempts to do that, Deputy.
Thank you, Deputy Smith. Deputy Roisin Shortall, please.